Fuck Warhammer Fantasy. Fuck Warhammer Fantasy. I'll fight all of YouTube. I left some meat out on the sidewalk, like some bologna and a rat trap, and this is what I've ended up with. Fortunately, most of them, I put the rat trap outside of a Warhammer store, so most of them know the lore anyway. But if you guys would like to introduce yourselves and your characters as we are about to head into the 41st millennium for Rogue Trader.
By the way, by smudges, he means the one labeled the God Emperor. Because you don't see smudges anywhere, the people. So,
yeah, that is a good point. But I will be referred to as smudges because calling me the God Emperor will feed my God complex too quickly, and it has to be spoon-fed, else my headphones.
Hey, yeah, we technical difficulties, so we had to do a whole new recording day. Okay.
I'm going to introduce you to the cast of characters. Well, the characters are going to introduce themselves. So to begin with, I'm going to start with the only son of our Lord Captain, a man by the name of Solarius von Romulus, who is played by Astra.
I'm playing as Solarius von Romulus. He is, having grown up on a frontier world, he has spent a lot of his time with and amongst the people there and in a dwindling estate. He is now grown and a tough, over 6 foot male, just reached his 20s. Son of Lord Captain. And he'll be introduced later on in the camp, in this session, hopefully.
Yes, he will, as he is not currently part of the captain's crew, which is why I think it's best to get him out of the way first. Now, getting on to the more established crew, starting with one of the captain's oldest and perhaps boldest of friends, the High Factorum, his seneschal, essentially his personal assistant, in no sense of being a personal assistant at all, because he certainly doesn't take emails, he just murders people. But that is Decker Armstrong. So, Alex, would you like to introduce yourself and Decker?
So, I'm Alex. So, I'm playing Decker Armstrong, or Decker, rather. The High Factorum of Captain Vex. He's a dark-haired man in his early 40s, medium height, medium build. He doesn't really stand out too much. He's the sort of man you could lose in a crowd. He comes from humble beginnings, made a life for himself as a ganger in the dockyards of Lind. He got wind of a shipment of arms going lightly guarded to a nearby system, so he decided, in his great wisdom, to get his lads together and steal it. Unfortunately, the Lord Captain Vex was hired to retrieve it. After a brief stint as a pirate captain, the Lord Vex was convinced to hire my character and my boys through the use of high explosives and his natural charm. He's been serving the captain for about 15 years or so, though there's some warp fuckery going on there.
Yes, there is. But there's nothing in the Imperium that isn't somehow involved with warp fuckery. Least of not the cults of Slaanesh. Anyway, thank you very much for that. So we'll move down another step, and we will get along to the ship's Engineer Prime. This bucket of bolts masquerading as a person goes by Utobic's words I can't be bothered to pronounce. I think it's a Kaleo, but I don't want to. I like pretending that I can't pronounce things I can read. So, Pen, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself and introduce your character?
I am the Uncloying Pen. I am the producer of this shit show, so if anything's not working, complain to me. As for Utobic's Akilo, he's a He's originally a tech priest coming from Styges 8, then through a lot of, honestly just a lot of bullshit that may or may not be warp fuckery, has ended up being gifted to this, rogue trader, potentially as a favor. It has yet to be entirely figured out. But he's about average height, red cloak, and most people don't see much more than that.
Next up is the ship's determined astropath, our very own Space Gmail, who likely goes through about as many problems as Gmail has recently, Varana Blackhand.
All right.
Would you like to describe yourself and your character?
All right. So, I'm playing Verana. On Warhammer Wiki, I'm known as Matthias Wordmake. In real life, I'm known as Matt. I'm a follower of Chaos. Screw you, Emperor Loyalists.
Boo!
All right. Now, as for Verana, she is a Sith astropath. She's has a bandana above her forehead since her eyes were burned out. She's around 5'4". She has pale skin, black hair. She was actually born here in Solomon's Chalice until, in the aftermath of a witch hunt, she was basically sent onto a black ship toward Holy Terra, where she was so bounded to the Emperor, and then she returned back to her port sword, where she was born, to basically serve the Espathic Choir, and then shit happened, and she ended up working for our current rogue trader. Not by choice.
We're also not sure if that was a good deal or not yet.
Yeah. This is the death trap.
Do we still have a receipt?
And finally, we have the ship's talented pilot, Palladorius Vex. Would you like to describe yourself and describe your character?
Okay, I am Plasma. That's all you're going to know about me in the real world. And pretty much I play as Palladorius Vex, the ship pilot, and also the personal driver of the captain. And pretty much he was born on the ship. He will die on this ship with good enough determination. And
that's what today's session is about. We're just killing him, fulfilling that wish.
Yep.
No story here. We're just murdering one of the player characters to begin things.
Yep, just to spice things up.
Game of Thrones has always been an inspiration to me.
Yep, and he is possibly he is a friend of the captain, since he basically has served on the ship since the captain has taken it over. And pretty much thanks to some shenanigans in the past, he now has a nice big old scar across his face that he does not like to talk about.
You are currently aboard the ship, the Mallum Melodium. Only a few days ago, your vessel dropped out of warp into one of the many stable systems of Solomon's Chalice. Now, to give you guys a little bit of background, Solomon's Chalice is a region on the trailing edge of the Calixtus sector. As described, it is a subsector majoris. This means, although it is classified as a subsector, it is of significant enough size to be placed in a delicate position between a sector and a subsector, which is why it doesn't typically appear on official Calixian charts and has its own set of astrographic maps. The Chalice of Solomon was described as such due to the original description of the Calix expanse by Solomon Harlock, the very famous rogue trader responsible for first charting the planets in this region. Since its settlement, it has become a vital source of promethium and a variety of other rare munitions and essential products that are sent out into the Greater Imperium, much like the Calixtus sector itself. But almost in amusing mockery of Terra, The Chalice of Solomon is a parasite on the Greater Imperium, relying heavily on imports of food and supplies for its multitudes of hive worlds and minimalist, very few agri-worlds. Starving for all but crime, violence, and depravity or corruption. Specifically, your vessel has dropped out of the warp into a region known as Inselvon. Inselvon is a star system which houses the sub-sector administrative capital. This world is known as Constantine. It is an oceanic class planet, and it is a sprawling hive. What is unique about Constantine is, as part of its excessive leeching that it undertakes on the Greater Imperium, they have become obsessed with the blue oceans of Constantine. It's soft blue marble against the red of the Blood Nebula itself has oft been described as one of the greatest sights in the subsector. And as such, the system imports vast amounts of chemical dyes, constantly re-dyeing its oceans to hide the thickness of pollution that fattens them and coats them with a greasy layer of scum. The oceans are polluted and foul, but to all but the highest of tech priests in its order of protection, it is only a significant rumor that the world's oceans are re-dyed at such great expense and decontaminated over the starving populace that dwells on rafts between the great hive cities. Now, specifically, while I'm at it, I'm going to drop you guys onto a nice page which comes with a little bit more information about the capital itself. You'll want to make sure that our cameraman has an appropriate shot of this. It talks a little bit about the planet's full description. It has an estimated 4 billion strong population. Its tithe is quite significant as it produces a vast amount of manpower in the form of its two most prolific regiments. Uniquely, the Byzantine Frogmen, a oft-mocked regiment. I was waiting for the snigger. An oft-mocked regiment for their name, but a well-respected one nonetheless for their formidable oceanic warfare. Their abilities to operate in both incredibly dense oceans at a great depth and in all manner of otherwise waterlogged worlds allows them to protect Imperial assets with impunity, as some Imperial assets are very rarely secured beneath great oceans, and most of the Imperial regiments don't have much in the way of naval combat experience, but also they have their ground troop, the Constantinian Landstrom, a well-respected regiment, but mostly retired. They mostly serve as the planetary PDF. The planet has 4 major hives of note: Altum, Loligo, Armoria, and Cerulean. Cerulean is the principal hive, the Hive Majoris, which is the hive capital of the world, which is where the planet's central monarchy is housed, and their planetary governor is also located here. So, as the ship hovers in the thickness of scarlet that is the Blood Nebula, you, our erstwhile and determined crew, have been gathered in the vessel's situation room under express orders by the captain. You all have vague ideas of what's going on. Many of you know that you plan to travel to the planet's surface. Decker, at least, you are well aware that the captain has been borrowing many of range of meeting, so you almost certainly expect that you're going to be indulging yourselves with some friendly contacts on the planet's surface. And, well, Romulus, you currently aren't present, but you have yourself been bussed into the system in advance by the captain's own expense. After all, you finally come of age and of position to be preparing to receive your inheritance down the line, of course. Meanwhile, Utobix, Varana, and Polydorius, you are generally unclear on the matters as you wait in the ship's situation room. From here, you can see the blue jewel that is Constantine. The skies around Constantine seem to glimmer with a soft, twinkling blue light cast off by its multitudes of space stations, its orbital defense platforms, its dockyard rings, and a whole variety of other important stellar infrastructure, helping supply the vast amount of import and export that comes through this planet every day. You can see the aftermath of those imports and exports yourselves, as much of the space around the planet is also littered with debris and junk, and the planet's orbit is thick with vessels going this way and that, from the vast universe-class mass conveyors, who you can faintly see trundling along like great fat slugs through the void, to whippy little escort vessels that dart in amongst the greater ships as they make their way to their own individual dockyards at ingress far less applicable to the vast super haulers. Millions of tons of produce being lifted on and to the world's surface. You get but a moment to recline here, and in this time, as you get the chance to look out on the scarlet void, marred only by that soft blue jewel and the gentle, pale white light of Incel Von in the background, as you have the opportunity to talk amongst one another while the captain is making his way down. Does anyone have anything to say, or would you like to simply wait for the captain in silence?
Evening, lads and lasses.
Palidorus is just like looking at the windows, admiring all the space station and the orbital defenses, thinking, just calculating in his head how he how he would approach this planet.
Preferably not head first.
Yes, obviously.
Well, it would be in his best interest, really, to approach it as peacefully as possible, for there are a vast collection of orbital defenses, and you are all vaguely aware that during one of the great insurrections into this system, a orc invasion that had wreaked havoc through many of the rimward edges of the sector, the Incel Von system, and Constantine specifically, had been an important staging point for the Imperial defenses, and as such, the planet's orbit is littered with laser defense platforms, torpedo stations, and a whole multitude of arched and Gothic fortresses, as well as you're well aware, as you've been guiding the ship towards its current gravitational mooring, a vast network of minefields, which, provided you know where they are, not a problem. But even in such a time since the invasion, many unwary or perhaps brash vessels have fallen prey to the leftover defenses of Incel Von.
Well, evening, lads and lasses.
Armstrong?
Any idea why the captain's dragged us up here?
Most likely he's got something planned on this planet. What it is, he hasn't talked to me about it yet.
I have a few ideas. I've heard a few things.
Ooh.
Just wanted to know what you fellas thought.
Well, we're probably going to get shot at.
Bit of a pessimist, are we?
Do you blame me?
Nah, I don't.
So, fortunately, your little conversation isn't given too long to stagnate before you can hear the heavy clump of the captain's own armored boots as he makes his way down to the situation through the great gilded doorway that hangs at the opening. The situation room is a nice and spacious area with plenty of simple seats and a small portion of the vessel's often poorly kept librarium scattered around on shelves at the walls, with a holographic display table occupying the center and a number of servitor uplinks, though the servitors have been reduced to all but one. The rest seem to have been either forcibly removed from their moorings or otherwise taken out of service, which will provide appropriate tactical relays of information for plotting and designing of important effects. Though the ship's materials often bear a strange, shoddy appearance, you've been rather devoid of crew after recent unfortunate disturbances in the vessel's humming way of life, and much of your servants' crew, who would keep the walls nicely scrubbed, have left the walls to accrue a dark and gritty appearance, with many of the curtains marred by the occasional brushing of cloaks and, well, general accumulations of mess that even the most dedicated crewmen, with little time spare to clean, could not get their hands on. The captain makes his way through the doorway shortly afterwards, hands clasped behind his back. The captain is an impressive figure, and although it does not bear describing him to all of you, you've all met him plenty of times. In general, I think it might be wise to give everyone a description. He's a tall gentleman, and well into his later years, standing close to barely 2 meters tall, and built appropriately for his size, with a robust feature, ruddy skin, and a great mane of white hair that cascades down his shoulders, alongside a long handlebar moustache that you think perhaps he's been copying a certain white-painted chapter of Space Marines for. I kid, of course. You aren't that familiar with Astartes, but I'm certain the rest of you will get the reference for his particular stylings. The captain bears a single visible cybernetic enhancement, which is occupying his left eye. A vast array of lenses. 3, to be specific. One large one, which is taking up the eye that it now covers, and the others adding range finding and various other tactical downloads connected by a thick band of wires that reach around to the back of the captain's head. He is dressed appropriately in smart gear, very well cleaned and decorated clothing with ropes of rank and the grey and orange smattering of colours that appropriate his house colour scheme, covering plates and plates of carapace, gilded with gold and brass, and finally overcome with a thick, heavy greatcoat with a great tall collar and large cuffs folded over themselves around his gauntleted fists. The captain bears 2 weapons at his side, a plasma pistol and a long, blackened blade, a longsword of sorts, with a power generator that clearly marks it out as a power sword at his hip. Again, most significantly in the captain's array of decorations is that over his shoulders, on top of that greatcoat, he is wearing the pelt of an animal. This beast seems to be a shimmering, velveteen black fur, deep as night, and with a hide of black underneath that strangely translucent fur. It is absurd that as you see it in the light, it seems to grow and shrink in size, and when you stare directly at it, all light seems absorbed by the darkness of this fur.
He wears a black hole.
Yes, a very tiny black hole on his shoulder. No, this isn't the Dark Eldar. But his Xenos pelt is illustrious, to say the least, and very well kempt. Although the animal's head has been reduced to nothing more than a vague shape, the creature's head, which is dangled over his left side, is of significant size, and you can only imagine that this pelt has been halved, or its full size must be incredible, though the arms merely dangle over his left shoulder, and a midsection kind of folds off to his right like a cape. The captain strides... Sorry, I'll just set him in and then he can continue there, Decker. The captain strides into the chamber and promptly plants one foot up on the low pedestal that is the ship's holographic projector table and regards your group with a cheesy grin.
I stand up and I say, "Good evening, Lord Captain Vex. You're well dressed, even wearing your flea bag today."
Palladorius quickly rises and salutes the captain. No.
Varana just looks at him.
Thanks, Verana. And Utobix?
I salute the captain from the planet.
hundreds of kilometers away, Romulus
He's
to attention and salutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Utobix. Yeah, right. Utobix continues standing off to the side, has not moved. He doesn't seem to move at all. Ever.
The captain smiles right back at you, Decker, his grin shrinking away to a smirk smile as you regard his flea bag, to which he remarks, "Oh, come now, Decker. You know this is the good one, not one of the ones I hunted myself. This is from back in the family. Don't dishonor my ancestry." But yes, you're quite right. I am dressed up today. And I'm expecting that you'll all be dressed up appropriately soon yourselves. You see, we've got a bit of a soiree to attend. An auction being hosted in the capital hive of Constantine. I've pulled quite a few strings to get us a placement in it. No need to thank me, and I appreciate the lending of your men, Decker. Your assistants are incredibly capable men when it comes to these matters.
They have their uses.
Though I'm going to keep my doors locked when I sleep around them, if that's okay with you.
No offense taken, my lord.
Marvelous. Now, go on, don't make me tell you. Ask, what's this auction for?
What is this auction for, my lord?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Decker, because I wasn't going to tell you otherwise. This auction is for a very rare bit of information. And you might say to me, "Oh, Lord Captain, so handsome and dashing as you are, how could you say that an auction is for information? Surely reasonable things are sold in an auction, like ships, vessels, vehicles, people." And I would say this information comes in the form of maps. But not just any maps. Have you gentlemen heard of the Lionheart fragments?
Sorry, was anyone talking to me? I was.
Palladorius looks around at the others and
It's a legend.
and says, "I'm not familiar with it, Captain, but I am always interested in maps, especially if it's regions of space."
Well, it's not just a region of space, Palladorius, though I appreciate the enthusiasm. These are warp maps, you see? Warp maps that were drawn up by the navigator belonging to a rogue trader house that plied this system back during the Angevin Crusade. a rogue trader house, coincidentally by the name of Lionheart. Now you see, there's more than just the Chalice of Solomon in this blighted corner of the Imperium's great golden mess. There is a region rimward of here, into the reaches of the halo stars, known as the Glittering Abyss, an untapped region, wild space, fraught with horrible dangers, vicious Xenos beasts, and treasures abandoned for millennia.
And as the captain is saying this, Pallador's eyes just get wider and twinkle more hearing this.
Yes. Save your drooling, gentlemen. I'm sure you can all see the opportunities that will arise from having such a map. You see, this Lionheart fragments provide information regarding passing the great warp rifts that bar us from the Glittering Abyss. These vicious turmoils are practically, well, they simply can't be traveled, even in material space, never mind in the immaterium. And as such, the only way to pass them is through a narrow set of way stations, much like the Maw in the Calixus sector. However, well, let's say it's far less official than the Maw. These fragments are about the only information, and they are a scattering of worlds and stopping points that you can leap to while you try desperately to evade the horrors that are these warp storms. Fun, I know, and believe me, I've heard no end of complaint from our navigator, but he understands the prospects of profit that come with it too.
How do you know it's the real Lionheart fragments?
Oh, well, that's a damn good question. I have it on good authority that it's a real Lionheart fragment, as the auctioneer at today's event is a Rear Admiral of Battlefleet Chalice. Now you might say, Lord Captain, Battlefleet Chalice is all but destroyed, and you'd be right, but fortunately Rear Admirals are typically found in the rear, and this one, while I'm never going to comment on the stature of one of the Imperium's great defenders, well, I don't think he's ever felt a ship shake when the macro cannons detonate. Or I don't think he's ever scuttled from the bridge as chunks of glass larger than your body are blown inwards by an errant shell. Needless to say, I don't think he's faced quite the horrors that ship combat has to offer, at least compared to some of us.
My lord, does this mean that we're not applying the 5-finger discount on this particular item?
Unfortunately not.
Oh.
We're taking it purely by our own merits. But I'll get to the party in just a moment, gentlemen. I have it at least on good authority that this is a legitimate Lionheart fragment, as the Admiral's reputation is riding on it. Believe you me, I believe he has planned this auction for far more reasons than, I think it would be a lovely thing to give back to the community by handing out this incredibly valuable map piece. I believe there's a little bit of maneuvering going on underneath him as well.
He could be skint, my lord.
He definitely could be. It would make sense given the poor status of Battlefleet Chalice, but skint for as you put it, for a Rear Admiral is not quite skint as you may know it, Decker.
I'll try not to take offence, sir.
I'd certainly take it as a compliment. Means you've still got enough sense left in you not to get used to the high life that you've been given. Now, anyway, gentlemen, this Lionheart fragment is of great importance to us, not just because of the prospects that owning one would give us. You see, I was pulling a lot of strings to accrue this meeting, and when you go to an auction, you typically have something to sell. While I imagine all of you willing for yourselves to the cause, I don't really want to get rid of any of you, nor the ship we're sitting on, nor the scant few thrones I have still rolling around in the vault. I don't really have enough influence to shake hands and push on the Rear Admiral. So I've called for some help. You're well aware, I hope, of our connections to the Honorable Manchenko dynasty. While they've been pushed out of the Greater Calixtus sector, their strength here is still insurmountable. Inquisitorial purges notwithstanding, and preferably not spoken about, while there may still be people listening at the door. But, regardless of that, the Manchenko's dynasty's gifts to us have been innumerable. They are part of the reason this ship still has enough plasma to keep itself farting through the void around this planet. And as it stands, they've been so kind as to arrange a deal with us. They're going to give me the necessary materials to make, hopefully, enough of a show that we will win this little auction. But in turn, we have to help a friend of theirs.
And who would this friend be?
Well, he doesn't really have a name, at least not one that we will speak again where it can be heard. But he is the master of another house you may have heard of. At least Decker, you may have heard of them. The Beast House of the Calixtus sector. If you want to figure out who that is, Decker, you can give me a common law on a +10, because the Beast House is relatively well.
A common law what?
Underworld.
Okie doke. First roll of the game.
And it's a success. That's a good sign. So, Decker, you are aware of what the Beast House is. A relatively illicit organization that trades exclusively in Xenos animals. While the cold trade of the imperial sectors is a thing pursued heavily by the Inquisition, trade of beasts is generally a little closer on the side of, let's say, a legal high. While it's frowned upon, the Imperium can tolerate it in much the same way that the sale of grox is the trade of Xenos. Though it's certainly not grox that are passed through the Beast House. And one of the Beast House's most famous proclivities with its Xenos is pit fights. Big, monstrous pit fights with the most foul creatures that the Imperium can concoct, specifically captured by determined hunters on some of the most cruel and dangerous death worlds known to man. So, Decker, do you answer with any of your knowledge, or are you going to keep...
They trade in foul monsters, don't they? Xenos creatures and that.
Oh, yes, they do, Decker. They trade in the foulest of Xenos monsters. The most dangerous...
Sorry, sir.
No, go on, lad.
I was just going to ask, do you think they'll be trading any of their specimens this evening?
They shan't be trading this evening. The Beast House has no stake in this arrangement. After all, what would they receive out of these fragments? But the Manchenkos would receive an ally with access to an unplundered vault, and they could call upon this ally, and the Lord Captain kind of rolls his hands over and points to himself with a roll of his eyes. And this ally could go hunting with his talented crew, of course. You see, I've heard whispers among other captains, and generally from my navigator and Manchenko, and they've heard these whispers from the Beast House, no less, that out in the glittering abyss lies a world known as the Veil. The Veil is a death world of no compare to anything that the Chalice of Solomon has to offer. I'd like you to think that the beast I wear on my back was hunted in on the surface of one of the few death worlds of the Clixus sector, and I've been told this is but mere thrones compared to the wealth that lies upon Vale. Exciting, no? Certainly is exciting for the Beast House.
I can see how that could work, my lord. Do you fancy going hunting?
Do you? Because you don't really have a choice in the matter. We're going hunting, even if I didn't fancy it, because the profits that we will reap from this endeavor will be, well, virtually uncountable once we've got the glittering abyss at our beck and call. But, on a side note, of course I'm ready to go hunting. Can you imagine? Hunting the most foul of Xenos beasts on their own homeworlds, far from the Imperium? It's what my family name is written for.
I cannot.
There's not much intrigue when it comes to wild animals, my lord.
No. But you have some fortune, my friend. For there's going to be a glut of intrigue on our journey down to the planet. Or at least once we get to the planet. And there will be plenty of intrigue after our hunt. Because, you see, the Manchenkos are arranging us a meeting with the Beast House. We will be doing the trade ourselves, and then paying them back with the profits we've made. A little circular, you may argue. But it's the best way to keep appropriate degrees of separation. And I'm sure you'll agree, it will be a nice, handy chance for us to make a mark upon the Beast House as well. An ally we could use.
I better be our allies than be Manchenko's.
Exactly. And why not both at our side?
Still wouldn't trust him, my lord.
Not as far as I could throw them, and then minus 3 meters onto the...
Especially not Manchenko.
Yes, well, let's not get too hasty about decrying the Manchenko. After all, our navigator is a house pledged only to House Manchenko. The Zayan dynasty will fly with no other ships than Manchenko fleet ships, and the fact that we have a navigator from their ships speaks so highly of our special relationship with them. So, I had to pull...
my lord, don't make me cringe.
I had to pull quite a few
Special
strings,
relationship.
Decker. I had to comb through nearly 5,000 years of history just to find the point that a Manchenko had married a Solarius. And believe me, that was involving dredging up some family history that would be better left buried. So, let's not be too hasty to decry it, eh?
As you wish.
Now then, when it comes to our trip down to the party, we're here for more than just the fragment. You see, this soiree is going to be an opportunity to meet with the best and brightest of punched-up, powder-covered aristocrats. Our favourite, wouldn't you agree? And we're going to need materials off them. Things to help with our coming hunt. Your little birds, Decker, have been twittering in my ears recently, and I've got a great deal of an idea of who we need to speak to while we're at the party. There's at least a couple who take most interest. Importantly, there is, of course, the Rear Admiral, Gwendolyn. Rear Admiral Gwendolyn is leading the auction, and impressing him is of utmost importance. Now, don't worry about the deal itself, gentlemen. I'm going to handle the intricacies of the deal. But if there's a chance where he's free to mingle, have a chat with him. Lay on the charm, or whatever you see as fit. I would certainly pressure you to all speak around the party. After all, the nobility loves to gossip, and any bit of information that they can dredge up about anyone else at the party will be very useful to you.
What is it we need from this Admiral Gwendolyn?
The fragment. The fragment is all we need from him.
But it's an auction, my lord. How can he influence it?
Well, you see, this auction is not quite as mechanical as the auctions you will know. It isn't simply the case of sitting in a nice series of seats and shouting with your hand up to raise the price. You see, this fragment is beyond mere prices. Instead, this auction is a chance for us to mingle with the auctioneer, the Rear Admiral, and to offer him whatever we can. By the end of today's party, he will make a decision on who has given him the best deal. After all, who can argue that a fleet of ships compared to an army of men in effectiveness? It all depends on where the Rear Admiral would need them. Perhaps he would love a fleet of ships to reinforce Battlefleet Chalice, or perhaps he would need an army of men to secure himself a factory world from the cogheads that would, well, obviously not from the cogheads, but to press on to the cogheads and, no offense, Utopics, and get the ships he needs at twice the pace.
You see Utopics' cloaked head just twitch a little. All that.
So, convince the Admiral. You said there were 2 other VIPs, was it?
Mm-hmm. It's less convincing, the Admiral, ultimately. I just need you to make as good an impression on him as possible. I'm going to be offering him the deal. Expect to find me in the wings of the Admiral by night, as there will be much to offer him. But whatever charm you can lay on him to at least press him towards our dynasty will be essential.
Who are these other VIPs, my lord?
The other VIPs include an old friend of mine. He goes by Governor Vanderkamp Ravencourt. He is one of the planetary, well, not planetary governors. In all specificness, he acts as a hive governor, or baron, as they are known on the hive itself. And the baron is in charge of Hive Armoria. Now, you might ask, what can a mere planetary governor, well, not planetary governor, hive governor, give to us? Well, you see, my old friend Vanderkamp is in charge of something known as the Wavebreaker Penitentiary, or as many like to call it, the Black Pit. It's a hollowed-out island, a great pit surrounded on all sides by roiling waters. One of the largest prisons in the subsector, never mind on the planet's surface. And we're missing crew. So hopefully we can convince the governor to liberate a few from their chains, that we might reinforce our stocks.
Yeah, and probably how we get ourselves stabbed in the back for our trouble.
I was just going to say that, my lord. Why would we settle for prisoners?
Well, to begin with, they will be grateful for the freedom they've been given. Freed from the shackles of oppression, working in the great mines, to instead work in the foulest bottom decks of this ship, laboring to fix plasma vents. And most importantly, it's because they're cheap. We are pouring out a great volume of our funds already on this endeavor, and to press our funds any further for a complement of expertly trained crew is time and money we just don't have. We need men. We need manpower. Good manpower is not necessary. I've got the good manpower up here where it makes a difference. They just have to listen and obey.
A fair assessment, Lord. And this third VIP.
Ah, yes. Baroness Esther Blackvine. Coincidentally, she is only a baroness by honorable decree on this planet. The baroness was once a planetary governor of her own right.
Yet now she's a baron.
Mm-hmm. Do you gentlemen know of Carnelia? Carnelia was once a garden world. Once. The Blackfine vineyards were some of the most prolific in the Segmentum. Anywhere in the Segmentum Obscurus, you used to be able to get black vine wine, at least if you had the money for it. And some of their rarest vintages have decided the fates of entire planets. It was a wonderful world. I visited there once or twice myself, and although I will never forget my back in the Segmentum Solar, this is a beautiful planet, or it was until the Mignol disaster. Now, it's best not to speak about the Mignol disaster, but when two worlds die in but days, you tend to have a lot of refugees. The Baroness was a giving sort. She opened the planet to receive everyone evacuated from those two worlds, orbiting Mignol. And they all came. And a planet with a population of scarcely 1 million jumped to a planet with a population of 6 billion, and scarcely the landscape or the supplies to provide for them. A tragic shame, to the extent that the original governor was ran out of the city, into exile, which is why she dwells now here on Constantine. And in turn, Carnelia is a horrible excuse for a hive world, at war with itself. Now,
so what use is she to us? So,
well, you see, the Baroness still has some of her assets left. And while she doesn't have a planet to name, she also doesn't have much use for one thing that I remember coasting on the planet myself aboard. An air yacht. Now, the useful thing about air yachts is they're perhaps one of the effective methods of hunting, especially on dangerous worlds. And so, I felt that it would be within our best interests to find a way to liberate it from her. After all, she has no great use for it now, whereas, in my opinion, if we were to have a anti-gravitational vessel that could coast above even the tallest trees and most unstable of grounds, we would have a perfect staging point for hunting.
indeed. Do you want to cut her in on the deal, as it were?
Preferably not. I don't imagine she would have much use for it. Instead, I think it would be best that we promise, at least in our arrangements, we promise only our word, if that makes sense. Obviously, we can put forward some thrones from our vault, and we can call upon whatever aid we have to offer them our influence, but we have very scarce material, and I doubt the Baroness would find much use for our hunt. Perhaps the governor may, but the Baroness certainly not.
Do you think she might want to come along for the fun of it?
I highly doubt it. She lived a comfortable life there. I think her being ousted from her own governance was enough of a thrill-seeking adventure, at least in her own eyes.
Aye. So somehow we've got to get her to part with her airboat.
Venator pattern air yacht.
Air yacht.
Fabulous things. And
Well,
comfortable as well.
At worst, we could steal it.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yes, at worst we could steal it, but if you have to resort to such means, you have to certainly go for that after the party. I doubt she's came to the party on such a thing. The atmosphere
Something tells me she'll be the most difficult person to deal with.
He is hoping not, but yes, something tells me that may be the case as well. Nonetheless,
All right.
as I stated, lean on some of the other party-goers. I'm not too sure who else is going. I know we have another naval captain, and some other rogue traders are definitely attending. Perhaps just a little bit of charm might liberate you some information to get around our present threats. So, gentlemen, yes?
Would any of the naval captains present have been at Port Sword?
Probably not. The Rear Admiral may have been possibly at Port Sword, but it's unlikely given his position here. If he has a home on the planet here, many of Port Sword's naval forces were destroyed or scattered or stripped of rank in the aftermath of Port Sword.
Aye. So, we have our mission. We have our 3 objectives.
Nice and simple, wouldn't you like to agree?
Aye. Best get dressed, eh?
I'd advise you all do get your finest on. Now, gentlemen, remember not to strap yourself with every weapon in the armory. If you must come armed, bring a blade. And if you have to insist on bringing a sidearm, keep it to a pistol. And keep it nicely covered and holstered. We're here for a party, not for a fist fight. A gunfight, obviously. And wear your best. You're dismissed. And so, you all likely get up to leave. But as you are getting up to leave, there is one. 2, in fact. First of all, he catches you as you're all heading towards the door, pausing with just a Palladorius?
Yes, Lord Captain.
Pack up your rifle in its arms case. We'll keep it aboard the ship just in case we do need some heavier ordnance.
Yes, sir, Lord Captain.
Just in case. After all, we're in a hive city, and we're going to be in a spire. Your long range will be most useful.
Yes, sir, Lord Captain.
And go get ready, gents. Oh, and one last thing before you all leave. There is a 3rd VIP.
A 4th, sir.
Thank you for the correction, Decker. But this isn't a VIP we will need to treat with or trade with. Just a very important person. I've invited my son to the meeting. I expect you to treat him with the appropriate respect for a member of my household, but also make sure that he's formed into as good a captain as me.
Would this be the one from...
Mm-hmm.
The
very same.
Good to see the young lad.
Yes. It was certainly difficult arranging him transport here from that... Well, you know where he was. But, all the same, yes. I've got him down there at the party. Governor Vanderkamp is probably chewing his ear off about some asinine tale of prison torture, so we'd best get down there with haste. And now, you are dismissed. Does anyone have anything to say to the captain, or stay behind to ask, or are you just going to go get ready and dressed for your mission?
Doris know what he's doing. He just goes down to get dressed in his first pilot's uniform and clothes.
First off, yeah. Master Helmsman uniform.
Yeah, Master Helmsman uniform with all the all the nice shiny gold trims and all that the captain gave him.
Yep.
And also, besides readying his sniper rifle, will also put his las pistol nicely tucked in the back of his cloak.
Okay, holstered.
Mhm.
And the rest of you, I imagine you're going to be wearing...
I'll actually be staying to speak with the captain.
Okay, great. Okay, so Utobix, what do you stay behind to pester the captain about? As the captain himself does wander over to the window to inspect Carnelia before departing. He's already well dressed for the occasion, as you can all tell.
I step up to the window next to him and speak. My Lord Captain, as you know, I don't do parties. However, I was wondering if you had any information on other of my kin at this particular event.
I have no knowledge of any tech priests attending this event. It doesn't really seem like your shtick, does it? I mean, fancy parties, human food.
That's my question. In that case, I will see what I have to lower the usual intimidation factor. It seems to follow my colors.
Yes, if you could do that, that would be good. Though don't be afraid to lean on a bit heavy. I mean, some threats here and there can go a long way to steal if you have a position of authority to press from. Just keep that in mind, that if you don't have that advantage over them, well, it can come right back to you.
I believe I have something in mind.
Marvelous. Well, get to it.
With that, I will leave the room.
Marvelous.
Another word.
So, soon enough, you all retreat to your chambers, appropriately dressed in your very finest clothes, and...
I want to say I'll show up in a Centurion war suit. No, I'm joking. So, Verana, your camera's down again.
Oh, crap. Oh, hold on. Okay, now I have to deal with the help.
No, I will accent my robe with a black cape that matches the actually, it reminds me, did I have any armor on? I forget. Checking my stuff. Oh, I had a carapace chestplate. It matches the black of the carapace plate in Stygies fashion and has Stygies 8's emblems on the corners of the cape.
Sounds good. So, with all of you dressing up to your very best, you will soon depart to the ship's launch phase. Here, the captain's personal stands prepped and ready by the tech adepts of the chamber, recently refueled, its turbojet engines whirring softly as it gently idles, heating up its internal coils before launching into the frigid void of space along the magnetic rails leading down the passage. Unfortunately, your launch is delayed a significant amount, as the vessel almost seems to resist your departure from her. Having spent so long aboard her recently during recent travels, orchestrating much from orbit and inviting people aboard, to lose the captain and all her senior crew, the vessel creaks and groans in discomfort, and the doors take their sweet time, with a number of jams and restrictions, failures of mag locks, and various other things that take far too long. But the captain seems chipper, remarking when the ship finally is rolling towards its launch position that I guess we'll all be fashionably late then. Before finally... Sorry, Utopix?
During this time, I'll be doing what I can to aid in soothing the machine spirit.
You're most likely directing many of the tech adepts on deck from the ship itself, telling them where they need to give their prayers, to appropriately get the bloody doors open so that the ship can begin depressurizing the chamber, allowing you to launch. But finally, the magnetic rails whir into life, despite the ship's protests, and the vessel launches into the thin cloud of partially vented plasma that clings to the ship's old hull like a miasma. And you're streaking away from your rotten old star galleon into the void, with Palladorius at the helm and the captain sitting comfortably in his own command throne, surrounded by all of you with your own comfortable senior officers' seats. Very well designed for being carted about the planet in style, while also retaining the necessary guards in case the ship comes down. You know, we've gold-plated the safety barriers in case things explode around you. And with your launch into the crimson void down towards that soft blue planet, we are going to take our first break of the night. Get yourselves a drink if you need it. I certainly do. My mouth has dried the fuck out. And hit the bathroom if you need it or anything like that. And then we'll come back with your arrival on the planet.
And if this ends up going as we think it might, we'll probably be seeing you, the viewers, next week.